So The Substance is a movie that's been spoken about quite a lot in the build up to its release, and before going into the film I knew it was going to be relatively dark, but I didn't see that ending coming from a mile off. This film took us on a journey of the beauty standards that the TV and entertainment industry place upon women specifically, and how the pressure of those standards can destroy an individual's life and how that person can ultimately become their own worst enemy. So with that, let's discuss this sensory overload of a movie and break down all that there was to take away from the ending. Here is a review of The Substance and the ending explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. The difference in Elizabeth Sparkle and Harvey. Something that was clear to see in this movie was the difference in the way that Harvey was acting and was being treated, and how Elizabeth was being treated. As a woman, it was almost insinuated that Elizabeth's career had a shelf life, and it was going to stop at 50, the age that she turned. It was essentially made out like her career would stop because the attractiveness was no longer there. This is what Harvey mentioned, and the reason as to why he fired her from her television exercise host role. Elizabeth was still a beautiful individual at her age, but because she was fired and because within that industry the beauty standards made her feel ugly, it made her feel like she was a monster and the ugliest person around. Let's bear in mind as well that the people that were bestowing this standard were all old, seedy men that were looking at the young women inappropriately. So it was a standard that wasn't present because of other women. Harvey felt like the appeal of a younger woman was what sold on TV, and at 50 he thought Elizabeth had lost it. Elizabeth was essentially mourning her career, and with that being all she heard, it was what led her to want to use the substance. When comparing that to Harvey, a man who was of a completely similar age to Elizabeth, he was a complete and utter pig in his attitude and the way that he genuinely behaved. However, it wasn't going against him or his career. If anything, he was at the height of it, making decisions for the network and launching Pump It Up, which brought in extremely high ratings. The contrast between himself and Elizabeth was shown to us by the way that his teeth had brown stains on them due to the smoking. He wore metallic heels that we'd hear the clunking of in order for him to appear taller, and he ate the plate of king prawns like a complete and utter pig, causing a total mess with no consequence or judgment. Him being the decision maker on what made a woman look good was a statement on an industry that's predominantly led by men, and how it can cause somebody to value themselves less when they shouldn't. The meaning of the ending. When it came to the ending of this movie, we saw that the abuse of the substance from Sue, using it for 3 months when it should have only been used for a week, had turned Elizabeth into a woman that had aged dramatically and didn't resemble what she originally looked like, and because of that, it made Elizabeth want to eradicate Sue for good. And after doing so, we saw an instant regret because Elizabeth didn't value the life that she had in the present day, and she didn't even value it when the experiment was being run properly. She didn't see the point in living an interesting life if she didn't look as beautiful as what society wanted her to be. She didn't feel as though she had a place within it, hence why she was just keeping herself cooped up in her apartment and living like a mess. This was what ultimately led her to become jealous of Sue, despite the fact that it was a carbon copy of herself. The worsening condition of the Matrix version led her to kill Sue, but once she did that, she brought her back to life by switching her blood into Sue's heart. The main thing that the characters were told to remember was, you are one. There is no her or she, it is you. And with Sue going on to kill Elizabeth because she hated that version of herself, she didn't realize that it would have devastating consequences, because one simply cannot live without the other. Sue was the better version of Elizabeth that was essentially going through her career again, but over time there became resentment and jealousy. And when Elizabeth would have her 7 days, she'd almost be haunted by the reminder of the better version of herself that was locked away in the bathroom, and those large eyes peering through the window on the billboard would be ever present. Something which made her feel even more worthless than she did before, as she couldn't even muster up the courage to go on a date with somebody that genuinely thought she was beautiful. What was particularly interesting about the ending was that after Sue started falling apart due to Elizabeth being dead, she broke even more of the rules and used an activator on herself, something that only had a single use. This was done with the hopes and intention of creating an even better version of herself. However, it instead merged both Elizabeth and Sue together, and she became this blob of a monster called Monster Alyssa Sue. With her being this monster, she actually ripped off the face of the large poster of Elizabeth that once dominated the living room and used it as her face, showing that now she viewed the original version of herself as beautiful. But it took transforming into an actual monster to see that. Elizabeth fell victim to the standards that were placed upon her, and they weighed on her mind, and it made her feel like she wasn't beautiful and that she couldn't have a career and was going to become washed up. when in reality, at the end, she would have done anything to have looked like what she did at the start of the movie. Elizabeth was mourning her career and her past life, and with Elissasu quite literally being attacked by the men at the end, and the dialogue going around in her head such as "everything's in the right place this time," pretty girls should always smile, and about how at 50 it's the end, it was reflective of the fact that that's what she was forced to believe, and the substance was what she thought needed to be done. And with that belief in her mind, she contributed to her own demise because she chose to listen to it. In the same breath, by the same people, she was once told that she was irreplaceable, that everybody had been waiting for her and that she was perfect. So it highlighted how the industry can turn on you at the flip of a dime. The final thing that we saw was Elizabeth's face, which was now separated from Elissasu, crawling over to the Walk of Fame slab that was in the ground, which we saw at the start of the movie when she was at the peak of her success. And once she was on it, she simply melted into it and was mopped up by the cleaner. Elissasu is something that will long live in the memory of the viewers of the New Year's Eve show, but I think with her just disappearing over her slab, it showed that she'd accepted who she was as a person in her final moments. And although victim to the pressure of the industry and unrealistic standards, she was for the first time content. Immortalized by her slab on the ground and also by the recording of the New Year's Eve television program. My review of the movie. I want to say that I enjoyed this movie, but it feels like the wrong feeling to express. It was so uncomfortable that it made it an experience that was incomparable to any other film that I've watched before, but in a good way. It was a sensory overload in terms of the visuals and audio, and it was like nothing else. It was quite literally disgusting at points. Scenes with the needle going into the infected back, the killing of Elizabeth, and also the monster regenerating and then just breaking apart. This movie wanted to make the viewer feel uncomfortable, and I feel like it was almost done like that to show how uncomfortable it is to probably feel the weight and pressure of those standards that get put upon people, and then ultimately end up making them turn on themselves because they don't feel beautiful enough. So if that was the case, then I feel like it was a really intelligent approach from the movie. Demi Moore was fantastic. Whilst in the trailer it said that it was her best performance to date, it's not far off of it. Her transformation from being this loved star to this monster at the end was incredible, and she particularly shone when she was full of resentment and jealousy towards Sue. When she was falling apart and becoming the consequence of wanting to live that younger, more fulfilled life for longer. Dennis Quaid also delivered an outstanding performance. He played the role of a TV exec that viewed women in the industry as products and a way of making money in a hauntingly perfect way. He was a creepy individual that loved himself and valued the work that he was doing. His shadiness and the two-faced, "I'll drop you when I don't need you anymore" attitude was carried through the screen. You could only trust him as long as he needed you, so it was well performed. When it came to the delivery of the character Sue, Margaret Qualley matched the other two experienced performers and held her own weight. I've not seen her in that much before, but I was really impressed. I've actually only ever seen her in Poor Things, with the small appearance that she had in that, so I'll be keeping an eye out to see what other movies she's going to be in. I would really recommend watching this film. It's not for the faint-hearted, just because there's a lot of blood and gore, and scenes that make you want to look away. But the visuals are stunning. The close-up shots of people's mouths when they're speaking and other body parts make you feel really uncomfortable, and it was intentional, so the director nailed it. The audio is something that's also incredible too. The sound whenever Elizabeth would receive mail from the organization that delivered the substance had a motif that would often repeat, and it became synonymous with events that seemed like they were going to go wrong. This movie lived up to the hype in terms of the story and also the message that it wanted to deliver, which is something that doesn't often happen these days, so be sure to give it a watch. So, there you have it, a breakdown of the movie The Substance. If you want to see some more movies from 2024 broken down, then click on the card in the top corner. There'll be a playlist up there. Or alternatively, you can head over to my channel where you'll find them all. And finally, if you'd like to see what I gave this movie out of 5 stars, then head over to my Letterboxd profile. It's where I rate the latest releases in real time. What did you think of The Substance? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. As always, thanks for tuning into the video, and I'll see you in the next one.